And I have a very distinguished panelist today, Sir John Charles Dalton. He's an international consultant experienced in almost all continents, more than 40 countries. I have Shamsul Alam Pantho, our international affairs commentator, and from Washington we will have Norman Floyd Barnes, our geopolitical correspondent based in Washington. First, let me know what are the latest breaking news Shamsul Alam Pantho is telling for us.
Thank you, Mr. Kanchan. Welcoming all my panelists today in the studio, Mr. Dalton and of course Norman Floyd Barnes from the United States. I want to begin by saying there has been an increased cyber attack on various airline systems causing major disruptions in European airports. Brussels had confirmed that at least 4 flight cancellations had taken place, but on the other side we see Estonia accusing Russia of violating its airspace after 3 Russian MiG-31 fighter jets entered the Baltic country sky without its permission. But of course, let me mention that there are 2 more breaking news. I'll read them one by one. The United Nations General Assembly overwhelmingly adopted a resolution enabling Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas to deliver his address through a pre-recorded statement. Of course, this comes in as Washington's decision to deny and revoke visas for Abbas and senior Palestinian Authority officials. There is another breaking news which says that America is creating a plan to retake control of Afghanistan's Bagram airspace. We know that the Taliban government has been reigning in Afghanistan, and we are yet to see what kind of implications it will have in the coming days.
Right, sir. Let us get the breaking news vibes from Washington, D.C. Norman is there. Norman, do you have anything you want to add as breaking news or news trending right now you are watching from Washington, D.C.?
Good morning, everyone. Here in Washington, actually here in the United States, we're getting ready this week for the United Nations General Assembly. Today, we also expect the Prime Minister from the UK to make a symbolic acknowledgement of Palestine as a state. And we are still dealing with the issues here in the United States regarding how we get along. So that's the, I guess, the overall basis we have. We are still trying to figure out how do we learn to work together.
All right, Norman, here is the expert, John Charles Dalton, an international consultant who has the experience of working in 40 countries and almost every continent. Sir, my first question would be, how do current reports about civilian casualties at Gaza challenge international humanitarian law, challenge UN Charter, challenge Geneva Convention, challenge basic war law?
Good morning. Thank you very much. My name is John Dalton, as you indicate. Norman, good morning. Good morning, sir.
Thank you. Good morning.
As I said last week, Israel has no standards, no compunction against violating international law. They're a rogue agent these days. We have to distinguish, of course, between this administration in Israel and Israel as a country which is essentially founded on the basis of freedom for all. Right now, they're engaged in the most despicable acts of violence in Gaza City, destroying the infrastructure that would be needed for the Gazans to rehabilitate their land and to live in peace. And they're making it impossible for anybody who is living in the northern half of Gaza. They're forcing them all to move south towards Khan Yunis and to Rafah on the Egyptian border. And the constant disruption of life is really contrary to humanitarian law. It's contrary to the Geneva Conventions, even in terms of the protection of civilians. That's just embedded in the Geneva Convention and has always been a standard that has been utilized. And the number of people who have been slaughtered and the number of children who have been killed in Gaza is despicable. It cannot continue. But the only thing we get from the United Nations is Secretary General Guterres telling countries, don't be afraid of Israel. And it's a total disproportionate, it's asynchronous kind of a situation. Israel is not that big. But when you give a cockroach an atom bomb, you should be aware of the consequences. And this has to stop from the United Nations and others. They are trying to create facts on the ground which will prohibit a two-state solution.
All right. Let me ask a counter question to Norman Floyd Barnes. Question would be like that. What are the responsibilities of the parties in an armed conflict under the Geneva Conventions? As John Dalton has talked about the Geneva Conventions, I need to do this question especially in densely populated areas like Gaza, West Bank, Nablus, this kind of places.
My response is the humanitarian efforts. People need to be taken care of. People are not combatants. Rules of war internationally should be followed. Women and children, elderly, the disabled should not be targets of the aggressions against Hamas governments or whatever. What we are seeing, what we are witnessing is genocide. It's genocide and is constitute war crimes. Someone will have to pay for this. The world cannot continue to tolerate this slaughter, this basis slaughter, this genocide, this is basically extermination of a whole civilization in the efforts to claim a piece of land. So hopefully the United Nations this week can put pressure on Israel and other Western governments to seek an end to this slaughter, this mass slaughter of human beings.
All right, Mr. Norman, today is the 21st September International Day of Peace, and United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres just tweeted, around the world, lives are being ripped apart, childhoods extinguished, and basic human dignity discarded amidst the cruelty and degradations of war. In the studio, we are discussing war. I want to get a take from our international affairs commentator Shamsul Alam Pantho. In 1 month, Israel has attacked 7 Arabian countries, claiming that Hamas are there. Do you think wherever they will target, they can do the attack and will claim Hamas is there, and there will be no retaliation, there will be no condemnation?
Important topic that you've placed on my table. Let me comment on it by saying that this attack on various neighboring countries inside Middle East, what happens is that they understand that they cannot deal with such a perpetrator or such a country that does not respect international law, does not respect dialogue. But coming back to what happened later on after the attack on Qatar and of course the Syria and Lebanon alike, it has moved the powerful into rethinking defense strategies. I'll give you an example as the Saudi Arabia and Pakistan defense pact, and of course we know Pakistan is a nuclear armed country, and in this case in various situations, even in the United Nations Security Council, we've seen Israel and Pakistan exchanging heated comments about Israel had mentioned that Pakistan had harbored a terrorist, and while Pakistan was claiming that they are doing an unnecessary genocide into the Palestinian people. So these are the narratives and the opinions from both of the sides. But when a country chooses to take on a warfront kind situation with its neighboring countries, of course it will send those who think that they are allies of the United States to have other regional cooperation. And even today I was seeing the Chinese Premier Wang Yi trying to condemn this attack into Gaza and Israel, and he was saying to look forward to a two-state solution. And how far You know that I'll be covering the UNGA, the high session debate week, and how far or not the two-state solution will be successful or not is a matter to be seen in the coming days.
Right. I was hearing you and I was hearing Norman. I framed different questions for John Dalton. Question would be like this: to what extent do you think diplomatic pressures, United Nations, EU, or other states are able to influence military operations in Gaza or Ukraine? I have added both the word.
Yeah. Well, I think all diplomatic, over the last 20 years, all diplomatic initiatives to try to control Israel and Israel actions, whether it's in Gaza or Lebanon or other places, have been unsuccessful. They do not respect the opinion of others, and they believe that they have the right to make their own decisions, their own determination. They always play the victim. You know, that we're surrounded and we're under attack, and yet they are the strongest militarily, they have the bomb, they're just simply play acting. This current administration in Israel is far right as far right can be. And so I don't see any possibility of a diplomatic solution even coming out of the United Nations. I think that the actions by 10 countries to try to recognize Palestine in a two-state solution is a Pyrrhic victory, because Gaza is destroyed. There's nothing there to two-state about. It's a pile of rubble. And as you know, I lived in North Gaza. I lived in Gaza City, and I've traveled throughout Israel. And I think this whole idea is to create conditions on the ground which will prevent the implementation of a diplomatic solution that's a two-state solution. So they're very canny, they're very wily, they know exactly what they're doing. They're carrying out this destructive campaign to make it impossible for a viable two-state solution to survive. The amount of the cost of repairing and all the infrastructure in Gaza is in the hundreds of billions by now. So that's how I see the situation. I don't see it happening at all. I mean, now let's look at Ukraine and Russia and the failure of the baked Alaska by Trump to produce any kind of tasty results. Every time he says he ends the war, and here and there and so forth. But this failure of the United States and NATO to create a successful barrier to Russian expansion into Europe has tried to use diplomatic means, has tried all kinds of ways to do it. The United States is a player in both of them by providing and arming the attacker. I shouldn't say that. In Israel, that's the case. But it's China that's mobilizing weapons for Russia. But the language, you can't resort just to diplomacy. There must be economic war. There must be the inability to provide basic economic advantages to Israel on the world stage. I mean, they should be a pariah state as long as this administration is in power. Mm-hmm. But I have a lot of respect for Israel. I spent a lot of time there. But this current administration of Ben-Gvir and Smotrich and Netanyahu are right-wing savages that are bent on destroying another civilization, Gaza, which may well have been the original inhabitants of that territory.
Exactly. Before I do a question to Mr. Norman, I just want to read out one tweet by the President of the United States of America, what you call POTUS, President of United States of America. He tweeted that Putin let me down. Putin disrespected me. What you gonna say? And with that, I want to add one more question. How might increased military escalation impact regional stability in the Middle East, especially in Eastern Europe also, because of the failure of negotiation by the Donald Trump? Mr. Norman.
My comments to your question is, you mentioned that POTUS, the president, stated that he felt let down. My response is that I believe his expectations were too ambitious. Russia has a plan. They have a mission. They have a philosophy. And anything POTUS, our administration, the Western world, think they can change that, is not going to happen. They are Russia Federation is on point, moving forward. They looking to achieve their goals. Their goals is to dominate the region, both physically, economically, and emotionally. They want people to understand. They want to understand that we are the dominant force. We control what's going to happen in the future, and you have to recognize that. And we have the military might and also the economic support of other nations to ensure that they meet their goals. So we have to be aware of what we're dealing with, and what we're dealing with is a whole different mindset. They have a plan, and we have to understand that we have to create a plan and a joint effort in terms of balancing that. We're not going to change their mind, so we have to understand that we're not going to convert anyone. We have to basically get along and figure out a way to do this. If not, we're going to be in a lot of trouble coming up in the future. The future is very bleak right now in terms of dealing with stuff. We're on the verge of having some type of, major conflict between the world nations, just because people want to get their way. My way is the only way. That is not the way the world is going to move forward.
All right. One thing is similar that I personally observe as a journalist, that one information from Western media has the difference with the information from Russian belt medias, Middle East based medias, and China belt medias. I want to do a question to you, Shamsul Panto. How reliable is the information coming from conflict zones, and what are the challenges in verifying casualty numbers or alleged war crimes? Because we cannot independently verify information getting from different sources.
Relevant question, but I will want to answer by saying that holding a gun is almost similar to holding a microphone. And of course, variable sources and how they report back on both sides of the story should be given the utmost importance. I mean, we understand how you look at Fox News in comparison to CNN. CNN is more criticisms of the POTUS, as you were saying earlier, but whereas Fox News is doing the news segments that are more highlighting the positive criterion that Donald Trump has presented in the last 9 months. So there is this significant difference between the two Western media houses that are picked out here. But if you look at Al Jazeera, their intensive coverage of the Gaza issue gains more viewership in comparison to other news segments. But of course, media, in respect of where they are from, definitely must have to pick out two sides of the story. It is up to the viewers, the readers, who will be able to judge which part they think is accurate and which part the majority is following. Actually, if you look at it in America, and of course in BBC Today is quite so important for the British broadcasting channel BBC. You see Keir Starmer is going to address the nation and come out of recognition of a statehood of Palestine. So it is a very big factor. Afterwards, immediately after he does that, how will the United States-based media respond is a matter to see. So as for your question, we understand that media should be free, fair and impartial on any kind of issue that is happening around our globe.
But there is a one quote in Western world that you see the war in the Middle East, in the war field, but there are media battle as well, there are cyber battle as well, there are bullying battle as well. When I will be back from the break, I will do a question to John Charles Dalton. That would be, what are the humanitarian challenges in this perspective? Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for a short commercial break.
সারা দেশে লাখো মানুষের কঠোর কর্মতৎপরতা ও নিষ্ঠায় এসএ পরিবহন পার্সেল অ্যান্ড কুরিয়ার সার্ভিস এখন 16 কোটি মানুষের হাতের নাগালে। দীর্ঘ 30 বছর ধরে বিশ্বস্ততা ও দ্রুততার সাথে সেবা দেওয়ায় গ্রাহক সেবায় এখন শীর্ষে। বাংলাদেশে গ্রাহক সেবার সাফল্যের পর এসএ পরিবহন পার্সেল অ্যান্ড কুরিয়ার সার্ভিস এখন বিশ্ব বাণিজ্য কেন্দ্র সিঙ্গাপুরে। আপনার যে কোনো পণ্য সিঙ্গাপুর থেকে বাংলাদেশে বুকিং এর জন্য যোগাযোগ করুন। এসএ পরিবহন প্রাইভেট লিমিটেড, লজিস্টিক্স পার্সেল অ্যান্ড কুরিয়ার সার্ভিস, 22 রবার্টস লেন, সিঙ্গাপুর 218302। ফোন 0065 629 24900।
What take place when the ego of the two leaders break the laws? What take place when the ego of the generals break the laws? But it is the youth and it is the soldiers that die. Sir, I want to do a question. I said earlier that what are the humanitarian challenges of displacement, food, shelter, medical aid arising from these conflicts, and how can the global community respond more effectively? We see United Nations is quite silent, sir.
Well, it's a big question. Let me outline some of the new contextual challenges, right? The amount of money which is now available to deal with humanitarian crises through the United Nations, through bilateral aid, is being cut dramatically. The United States is walking away from its international challenge temporarily. I believe they'll come back. The United Nations is going through a massive upheaval, even moving some of its population into key centers in Kenya. But money is scarce to deal with the magnitude of the humanitarian crisis. By the same token, I think we're running into some sort of a emotional fatigue, that how much of these pictures can we see day in and day out of children being held by their parents up in the air covered in ash as they've been bombed by Israel, or children lying in hospitals in Kiev, or other children and women in African countries like Sudan. We just simply can't wrap our mind around the inhumanity which is happening simultaneously in so many places, in a context where there's no money and where diplomatic efforts have fallen behind. We live in an instantaneous world. The time for diplomacy and the steady progress disappeared. We get instant news, instant, quick flashes back and forth. So there's no, as Norman calls it, there's no plan on a part of how do we deal with such a magnitude when we have feeling this emotional fatigue and observing moral collapse. How do you wrap your mind around that? And so it gets back to the question you asked before about what journalism and the media. They are not simply concentrating on that enough. The human dimension, the pain, the suffering. I've been in a number of post-conflict situations. It's not nice. It's not the feeling, you just simply feel exhausted all the time. So I hope that somehow out of this, the philanthropy will come forward, private contributions will come forward that recognize the enormous change in the global psyche about humanitarian challenges.
Sir, I personally have got the experience to cover the Iraq war in 2003 from the battlefield. I was in a hotel where all the Western medias also used to live over there. We used to go to cover the event together under the combat agreement with US Marines, and we have to come back to the hotel together. But at night, when we see the different media outlets, we see the different numbers, the story is different, the storytelling process is different. That actually made a big question to me. What is journalism? I just want to do a question relevant to this. What role do media outlets and journalists play in shaping public opinion and possibly policy in such complex? I want to do this question to you, sir.
Bit repetitive, but I will definitely answer to this extent. Public opinion, one of the things that are major issues before in the face of any kind of live event or anything that occurs on this planet. But as Mr. Dalton was speaking, I was hearing how there are multiple fronts around the world where humanity is not even considered, while innocent people are being affected almost on a daily basis. Even when we started this show, the death toll in the Gaza issue was almost 54,000, which that number stands at 65,000 today, and it's climbing. And there is no ending to this aggression. I don't see a possible end. But coming back to the question of journalism, of course, it is quite very important to be able to uphold the truth, uphold the correct, accurate information. Even previously, I'll tell you, even when BBC gets something wrong or their information is not valued or verified, they do come out to apologize for the inconvenience it causes to the public domain. So that is just one example. And of course, media is vast spending. There is centrist views, there is leftist and rightist views on this matter on various political issues which media may choose to uphold. And of course, it's not only just news that's concerning with the media, there's various other plateaus and avenues in media that one could consider. But coming back to what will be taking place this week, leaders will be inside that hall room, inside the UN headquarters, and they will all be coming out of the major issue of the two-state solution in Palestine. But if you come back to it, if you look at Bangladesh, for example, this time around the chief advisor, Mohammad Yunus, is not only taking him and his advisory panel, but he is taking himself with leaders of other respectable political parties. So it's a difference and variance from what we used to see in previous governments. But how much of that will represent Bangladesh in coming days, or how much of it will Bangladesh be coming into that? We know also there is a arrangement to talk about the Rohingya repatriation issue towards the end of the UNGA 80. So how much Bangladesh will have a comment on that individual matter is a matter to see. But once again, journalism, I would definitely add that it should be taking up the voices of both of the sides to any kind of story.
Very nice and articulated. I'm sure Dalton would add something important for us.
Well, just real quickly, I think that's one of the things that's happened if you look over the last 10 years is how the corporatization of media. You know, media is controlled by regulators. Media is controlled by governments. Media is controlled by many things. The ownership of media has a profound influence on the message which is coming forth. Sinclair Corporation, which is buying up TV stations and radio stations in the United States, telling a highly conservative message. And they're restricting independent journalists from having the ability to report the news accurately and independently and objectively. And as soon as somebody becomes objective, but in a challenging way, people like Donald Trump will sue. So we have the whole litigious nature of people like sacrificing 16 billion. George Stephanopoulos was saying one word. Trump is suing the Wall Street Journal for $1 billion. I mean, it's all now, we can't look at independent journalism as we once did. Those days are gone. Huntley, Brinkley, gone. Forget about it.
Journalism is at a huge risk. I want to include Norman Flatt Barnes. I was listening Situation Room this morning. The breaking news is Donald Trump threatened a media company to cancel the license. I was listening it from Wolf Blitz's show, and Donald Trump clearly says to the media, I am going to cancel the license of that media house. Norman, do you want to include something in United States? There are two kind of polarization in media business. One is Democrat, another is conservative. I mean, in Republican parties, do you think media should be controlled by the parties, or media should be mass media? General people will enjoy the media.
Well, first thing, journalism has to remain professional. And if you are an employee, it's very difficult. Meaning, if someone controls your ability to make a living, your skill sets, you are basically challenged. I mean, it's challenged to do a good job when your boss's boss tells you what you can and cannot say, what you can and not view, what stories are being told, what information is put out there. It's being sanitized. There's a reason why the wealthy, the people who can afford to buy these companies, they want to control the narrative. You control the narrative of power. It's not the money, it's who has the power. And the power is the media. What information gets out there, what the narrative, what story is told. What is the story? If you can control the story, you can control the world.
All right, there is a breaking news and which will make happy the cricket lovers of Bangladesh. I just want to share between the topics. Bangladesh beats Sri Lanka in Asia Cup Super 4 opener. News is Bangladesh won a last over thriller against Sri Lanka by 4 wickets in Dubai, opening their Super 4 campaign strongly. Congratulations, Bangladesh cricket team.
Congratulations.
Thank you, Norman. Let me do a question to Dalton. Dalton, you know, what kinds of vulnerabilities make airports and other critical infrastructure targets for cyber attack? Because we have a news, some large airports in Europe are facing disruptions owing to a cyber attack. This raises issues of infrastructure security, resilience and international coordination. It's a huge matter going on in Europe.
It's a huge matter going on in the United States too. We can look at disruption at airports, but cybersecurity also affects election integrity. We've been through that in the United States where cyber attacks or purported cyber attacks have affected election results. We have the situation where the electric grid and the water systems are all now driven by technology. So they're exposed to cyber in a way that they never were before. And in fact, we have significant threats where I was from in the Northeast of shutting down the whole Northeast electric grid through a cyber attack. Luckily, that was able to be fixed. But this is a function of anarchists on one hand, political opportunists like Russian operatives that were involved in the 2016-2020 elections. And it's also a function of war by another means. This is an act of war. I mean, you can talk about how they're disrupting the economy, disrupting the airline flow, disrupting commerce and business. It's war by another name. And it's so difficult to isolate it because of the concept of network. Everything is interconnected in the system. So even finding the source of the cybersecurity attack, even finding the individuals which are non-state actors paid for and organized by a state like Russia, for example, in the 2016 election, this is a huge problem of the integration of technology and the systems approach that we have to making everything automated and fully integrated. So this is a huge problem. It's being addressed. I think that there are people that are working very, very hard on the United Nations. All the numerous countries are trying to work on to prevent this. There's also ransomware that's a function that comes into this. Stealing intellectual property by lack of cybersecurity. It's a multi-dimensional problem. It's being addressed, but because anybody becomes able to plug into a network and access critical infrastructure, this is going to be something we're facing for a very, very long time.
It is more dangerous than war, sometimes in some aspects.
Well, I mean, if you look at it'll cause more of an economic impact if, for example, somebody is able to hack into information that enables another country to make an atomic bomb. You know, we had I think that was his name, Jiku Khan.
Microchips.
No, the guy, the Pakistani who provide information to North Korea. That what's happening is just simply the failure of us to appreciate the dynamic changes which are taking place through technology. I mean, AI is a good example, but on another side of it, we are just now at the network stage when everything is accessible, everything is in a system. Finding how to penetrate that system with an evil intent can cause enormous economic disruption, whether it's airplanes or what.
All right, Mr. Shamsul Alam Pantha, our international affairs commentator, how prepared are governments or private organizations, especially in South Asia, like country like Bangladesh, to withstand such cyber disruptions? Because as per we know that we are not that much developed like Western countries like the United States or like the Chinese belt countries. How do you see this?
For your question, let me start by calling a reference towards something that has happened over several years in Bangladesh. There's been a Netflix documentary called Bangladesh Bank Heist, and how that had happened, how so much of a request into the SWIFT network into our Bangladesh bank access, and how that happened over a government holiday, not only in Bangladesh but also in if I'm not wrong, the Philippines.
Sir, I'll just apologize for a short interruption because I'm getting for 1 minute only for Norman.
Please,
I want to do the same questions to Norman. Norman, would you please let us know what are the measures United States government, especially federal governments or state governments, are taking to face such cyber attacks?
The United States been working on this for many decades to figure out the question. The question is, what do we do about information we don't have? Basically, we don't know what we don't know. Government's trying to control something that they can't see, they can't physically touch, and they really don't understand. The information technology is moving at a pace twice the speed of sound, of light, actually the speed of light in terms of evolution. And we don't have the ability, the knowledge, or the education to keep up. So things are happening, and we are going to be constantly chasing the wind, chasing the tail, trying to control and manage something which we don't understand. So it's going to be a challenge in terms of technology. We need more education, we need more training, we need more communication, we need more private sector working with the government to get things going versus the other way. We're trying to control something that we don't know. And it's very difficult, and it's going to be very challenging, and it's very risky because we can lose it all because we don't know what we're doing. We have no idea what we're dealing with.
All right, Mr. Norman, huge thanks for your early morning participation with us. I really appreciate your thought-provoking contents you are providing to us from Washington. Let me come back to the studio. Sir, how can international cooperation help in preventing, detecting and responding to such cross-border cyber attacks? Because we see if something happening in United States, later we found that attack has come from the other parts of the world. According to editorial policy, I cannot name any country's name. How do you see this?
Can I?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. Well, I mean, I think there are rogue actors in the world that are just simply trying to disrupt other economies for their advantage. This has happened by people that are like sitting in a back room in Russia or Israel or Mexico City or wherever it happens to be. They're anarchists. Their goal is to disrupt the order of the global order and to prove that capitalism has been a failure. And so they have a political agenda. And those people are extremely difficult to deal with. As Norman says, we don't know what we don't know. But more importantly, they don't have a stake in the economy of the world. They are disruptors. And so it's good that we have global alliances, and they exist and they work effectively. We have cross-border. The United States and Canada has agreements, for example, on water infrastructure that are controlled by technology. But we are in a whole different dimension now, where our ability as humans to think about the extent of this problem and to try to deal with it, it's beyond our capacity. It's accelerating beyond our ability to control. And as long as there are evil actors, it's going to become who can operate independently or as non-state actors supported by a country. This will happen. And so we need to get more and more and more invested in cybersecurity for the good of humanity. So what's interesting to me is that all these things seem to be fitting together, you know? Journalism, media, cybersecurity, humanitarian aid. We're all looking at the complexity of multiple factors coming together all at the same time. And it's just simply difficult to even articulate.
All right, sir. There is a survey by Harvard School of Business Foundation. They have said that every hour, 300,000 evil people are trying to hack the accounts or websites of important organizations. I'll come to our international affairs commentator Shamsul Alam Pantho. First of all, I apologize for interruption. Would you please finish the things you wanted to say? And I want to add one more question with that.
Sure.
What legal or regulatory frameworks exist or should exist to ensure cyber security of civil infrastructure?
So as I was saying earlier on, an event that had taken place February of 2016, roughly 9 years ago, how hackers had tried to install malware into the Bangladesh bank servers in generating SWIFT requests for multiple amounts of money to be moved out. The stolen amount attempted was almost 951 million USD, where the actual stolen amount was roughly 101 million USD. It was of course moved into the Philippines and Sri Lanka, and of course into casinos, where that money could be hidden and shown as different sources of income. Of course, world media had taken to storm when this came out, and producers and directors had in order to let the public know, they created a Netflix documentary regarding this issue. But once again, as per your question, how you were saying that how governments should respond, how the stakeholders should understand this threat, any country, not just Bangladesh, should have their own cyber security task force. What I believe is, if there are 10 people who cannot be seen, cannot be found, we do not know their names, there should be 20 more who are working in the same dominion in order to foil such attempts at any kind of network systems. But in Bangladesh, it was a Bangladesh bank's system. It could be any kind of target. It could be not just airlines, it could be banks, it could be private banks, it could be hotels, hospitals. As the dependency of technology emerges, I think this is where the cream of the cake stands at. The more dependent humans become on technology, the more there are risks involved in doing so.
Sir, I have a breaking news. Increasing global temperature and record heat projections. Reports warn that within the next few years, global temperatures are very likely to break records, with heightened risk of heat waves, climate extremes, and exceeding thresholds set by the agreements like Paris. I'll have detailed discussions with my dignified panelists John Dalton and Shamsul Alam Pantho, but here I apologize for a short commercial break.
বাংলাদেশ থেকে সিঙ্গাপুরে পণ্য বুকিং এর জন্য যোগাযোগ করুন ঢাকা সহ দেশের যে কোনো ৮০টি শাখা কেন্দ্রে। এসএ পরিবহন পার্সেল অ্যান্ড কুরিয়ার সার্ভিস, আপনার সেবা সব সময়।
Welcome, Grand Palace Hotel, Dhaka. A majestic lobby blending timeless elegance with modern design. Experience 5-star comfort in suites and rooms. Sophisticated fine dining restaurant. Crystal clear swimming pool for ultimate relaxation. Modern gym and serene spa for well-being. Perfect venue for corporate events, weddings and parties. Seamless and secured. Elegant and eye-catching design. Indulge, relax, discover the first 5-star chain hotels in Bangladesh. Grand Palace Hotel Dhaka, 22 Kakrail, Dhaka, Bangladesh.
Welcome to Grand Club at Mirpur 10 Dhaka.
As you said before the break, the planet is feeling so much heat. I want to put my first question to John Charles Dalton, an international consultant widely known for his knowledge and wisdom. Sir, what are the key reasons scientists believe that global temperatures will break records in the next few years, and we see some symptoms already?
Yeah, well, sure. I mean, we're getting CO2 emissions, which are, clearly affecting the temperature in, again, it's a system and a network, so every little piece that's at a flaw is like a virus that affects the entire operation. And so global climate change is clearly a reality. It's being denied by some people who are contributing to it. The industrialized world, of course, is first and foremost. Carbon emissions, increasing sea levels are going to be a factor. But the thing that I would like to just focus on is, and you asked about what about the impact of the global climate change, it's always the poor. It's always the poor that will suffer the most from any kind of a natural disaster or natural problem. The places that are going to be infected here in Bangladesh are in the south along the Bay of Bengal, in the
Coastal belt areas.
Yeah, all of these areas are going to be the most critically affected, and that's where poor people are resident. It's true all around the world. I lived in Ethiopia and the Horn of Africa during the famine. And it was a terrible thing to observe and a terrible thing to understand that people are helpless. But the powers that be, from the Paris Declaration and others, there is simply a scientific challenge that can be obtained as to whether or not a 2% increase in the temperature will in fact cause significant damage for global civilization. And
Elegant spa and wellness facility for ladies and gents. Play pool and snooker in international standard billiard zone. World-class gym facility with exclusive equipment for man and woman. A restaurant of delicious local and international cuisine. Fully air-conditioned building with spacious banquet, car lift, sky view rooftop restaurant, all in one. Grand Club Limited, Mirpur 10, Dhaka.
কি এমন জিনিস যেটা সব লোকে খায়? ছোটরা খেলে পরে কেঁদে মায়ের কাছে যায়, বৃদ্ধ লোক খেলে পরে মাথায় দেয় হাত, যুবক যুবতীরা খেলে পরে এদিক ওদিক তাকায়।
ছেড়ে দে শয়তান, ছেড়ে দে, দেহ পেলে আমার মন পাবি না, ছেড়ে দে।
কোন ফলের বীজ নেই বলো দেখি দাদা, বলতে না পারলে হবে তুমি গাধা।
মন্দিরা চক্রবর্তী কার সাথে প্রেম করছে?
আমি এখন মা হতে চলেছে।
চিনেছি তোমারে আকারে।
Well, irrespective of whether you are wealthy or not, the climate shall change and affect almost every territory equally. That is my take on the matter. But if you look around the whole world, you see floods, we see earthquakes, we see wildfires. This wildfire is quite so common in the United States. Even previously, multiple counties have been gone through this natural calamity. But even this morning, around 12:20, we've had an earthquake in Bangladesh twice in 1 week. This is, I'm giving you the statistics here. And not only that, over the last couple of weeks and months, we've seen floods ravaging parts of Pakistan. And of course, historically speaking, Bangladesh is yet to be hit by a tropical cyclone, which in 1 year, there's at least 1 or 2 cyclones that batters Bangladesh in the coastal regions. So we're still at the end of monsoon season, but we can expect a cyclone in the coming up days. But that's not the issue here. The issue is how much attention does it garner from various worldwide governments in tackling this issue. We look at Texas, where a girls' camp completely ravaged by a flood, over 100 dead, and many people came to the started questioning where was the administration's support line in addressing this issue. So it's a matter of flood, it's a matter of readiness, it's a matter of governments trying to engage their emergency response teams, especially for Bangladesh, a country that will be facing a lot of calamity from this regard, from climate
Right, sir.
change.
Regarding the same matter, World Bank has published the Bangladesh issue. They have said heat cost to Bangladesh 1.78 billion US dollar in 2024. Bangladesh suffered large health and economic losses due to rising heat, including low work days, increased diseases and adaptation needed. Sir, I want to add this question with you. You have a very good experience on 3-4 particular areas regarding Bangladesh. I have seen so far your local governance, decentralization of the government and using revenue or public money. My question would be related to World Bank's this issue that they have calculated Bangladesh lost $1.78 billion due to the climate issues. Do you have anything to add or advise or to say about this?
Well, it's an estimate, of course. It's informative and it's helpful. I mean, I think that the number of deaths that are attributed to the pollution in the air is also a critical thing that the World Bank has reported on, and ADB as well. I'm going to use an American colloquial expression. You cannot cure a sick cow by weighing it. All the data in the world is interesting to look at, but there needs to be some kind of a practical intervention for what to do about it. It's always retrospective, isn't it? And there needs to be some forward-thinking strategic issues about, let us anticipate what's going to happen and create the means of dealing with it. It's great that it's done, and the World Bank is a respected institution, but measuring or weighing the problem is not going to be a proper prescription for dealing with it. We have to move beyond, okay, if that's the loss, and I'm sorry it's only in economic terms because the human dimension of all these problems is much more important, there needs to be some recognition that we're getting bored by just simply weighing the cow. What do we do about prescribing something to make it better? And up to now, various governments have sort of given a lot of lip service to it, but it's so difficult and costly to come up with solutions that deal with the fundamental problems of how these impact on human life.
Sir, as you said, we must think about the solution. What role does funding, technological innovation and public awareness play in adapting to increasing climate extremes?
Yeah, well, most of the money is being spent on trying to ameliorate the problem that already exists. You'd like to see more innovation involved, and like coming up with things that are a little bit more outside the box, as they say. Bangladesh is, I believe, and I will see after September 30th, that the revenue stream for Bangladesh is going to tie its hands considerably on any venture to correct climate change, to invest in education. I think the revenue stream is going to be significantly less than anticipated and less than needed. A recent report today said, okay, that while the budget was very well done, it followed the old model. And it was basically a repetition of the same process over and over again. There's a need for significant innovation in public financial management in Bangladesh, increased taxation, particularly property taxation, and decentralization. You cannot run a government this size from Dhaka alone. 7 of the top 10 countries in the world have a federal republic. They divide the country into areas that allow them to be managed independently. If there are floods in Borishal, then that government area would be able to deal with it more effectively than the Ministry of the Environment sitting in Dhaka. I mean, the government needs to think, the people need to think about how do you distribute the power and how do you distribute responsibility for solutions outside of Dhaka. It cannot simply be a super centralized place with such limited resources. I think that the problem is going to become worse significantly because of lack of revenue.
I really appreciate, sir, for your very valuable insights, very valuable advice. Ladies and gentlemen, as I say, today is 21st September. United Nations is observing this day worldwide as a day of peace. Everybody love peace, everybody love happiness, but we have to eradicate the mindset of war from this world. I will see you tomorrow.